Jesse, are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's take this thing home.
All right. Fill in the blank. The number one question you have about Notre Dame's wide receivers this season is blank.
Is consistency. I think they need someone who's going to consistently show up every game, be the alpha in that room and be a guy that's nearing, 1,000 yards, if not more, by the end of the season. I just need from game 1 to game 12, I need to know that there's a guy that is reliable, right? Like on a big play, big down, I know I can look for this guy and he's going to consistently get the job done. That's what I'm looking forward to, for the most.
My biggest question going into this season is what's Kris Mitchell going to be? We know Kris Mitchell is fast. We know he can play on the outside, as you diagrammed in some of your whiteboard yesterday. He's a guy who can help take the top off the defense. But there have been plenty of guys who can do that. So my question is Kris Mitchell going to be more like Chris Brown, speed guy?
From kind of more of a decoy as they're going to catch the ball.
Yeah, like is he going to be a Chris Brown who is just racing downfield on streaks and go routes to try to take the top off the defense and open up the rest of the field, or is he going to be more like Will Fuller and have speed, and more volume to go along with it? So that's what I want to know. Just like what exactly is Kris Mitchell going to be? I don't think that he's going to have 1,000 yards like he did last year at Florida International, but what's he like? Is he just going to be one or two catch a guy game, but it's going to be like 18, 20 plus yards, like what exactly is he going to bring to this offense on it? Because that's like something that was still an incomplete answer coming out of training camp from the opportunities that we got to see. Like he did some stuff, but we didn't see him, take off in a big way. He's going to be part of that 6-man rotation though, but to what extent is he going to be a part of it? Speaking of which, fill in the blank. The Irish wide receiver with the best chance to get to 1,000 yards this season is blank.
It pains me to say this because there's a huge super fan in the chat that is always reminding you who he's a super fan of. But it's Jaden Greathouse. And I knew it was Jaden Greathouse when they talked about him, basically being able to play the slot, being able to play the field, being able to play the boundary, because what that means to me is he's your most influential, important wide receiver because he can play all spots of the field. I think he's able to – they're going to be able to find ways to get him the ball on different kind of, alignments on the field. He's going to be that guy who I would like to compare to CeeDee Lamb, just a guy who can do just about anything at all of the wide receiver positions.
That's my answer as well. I'm going with Greathouse. I think that all these other guys are all going to play a key part of this offense. And like, he's not going to be the sole focus of the passing game, but I think because of his versatility and the size and not the elite speed, but good speed that he has, and just his ability to do a lot of different things. I think that he's going to see a lot of balls coming his way, and he's got the opportunity again. Like defensive backs have talked about him during camp, and they've talked about his craftiness. Like he's got a little bit of that extra, not just like raw talent, but he's got some intangible there as well, like knowing how to get open, knowing how to use his body and do these different things. So I think that it's going to be him. Returns do not count in this. We're only talking about what they do as a wide receiver.
So,
Joe,
just to kind of add to what you were saying, Greathouse is also, in my opinion, going to have the highest usage rate amongst all the wide receivers. He is going to have the most snaps played, offensive snaps played out of all of the wide receivers. He's going to be on the field the most in comparison to the rest of the wide receivers.
I agree. I completely agree with that. And I'm curious to see to what extent Faison is out there as well, because he's another guy who is going to play some multiple positions. Like those two, I think, based on everything that we've seen and heard, those two are the guys who are going to be sort of the most flexible and interchangeable with their ability to play both in the slot and outside. DK says if Greathouse doesn't get 1,000 yards, I will never talk to Salty again.
Oh my.
Good question, Stymie. I don't know. And I don't think that was asked of him yesterday in terms of his ticket request for this game, because obviously he's from down there by Austin. So here's what Riley Leonard said when he was asked about facing his former head coach, Mike Elko, this weekend. This is from Riley Leonard. Quote, as the game builds up for me, for whatever reason, I become more and more emotionless because I become more confident. I'm going to get there on Saturday, and they're going to call a play, and I'm going to have repped it, 10, 15 times by now. Nerves come with lack of preparation, and the more I prepare and practice and things like that, my nerves just calm down. End quote. That is blank, Jesse.
That is exactly what I want to hear from my starting quarterback, right?
Yes.
Like, I want a quarterback that literally says, as the game goes on and the intensity heightens, the pressure heightens, game on the line, my heart rate actually goes down. Because when you think of the greatest athletes out there, like, let's just probably talk about Steph Curry. Like, you think his heart rate goes up when he's pulling up and taking, those big time shots like he did in the Olympics? I think it's the opposite. I think he gets calmer and the game slows down for him. And that's why he's so successful and actually makes more of those shots, right? So if that's how Riley Leonard feels about himself, I think that is, again, exactly what you want to hear out of your starting quarterback. But I got to see it first, right? Like, it can't just all be talk. You can have that confidence, which, again, I appreciate. And that's the kind of confidence I want you to have. But I got to see it. I got to see if he's going to walk the walk.
But it's the perfect answer to me, because he was asked about facing Mike Elko. And what he's basically saying is, like, that really, like, it's a storyline, but it's not a huge factor, because once he takes the field, it's about the preparation that he's done. Like, he's not going to be thinking that much, I don't think, about Mike Elko standing over there on the sideline. It's going to be about, this is the play call. We've repped this thing over and over. I know this thing like the backside of my hand. I know it inside and out. And that's what it's about. It's about preparation. And like you said, like, things break down when you're not prepared. But everything that we've seen about Riley Leonard says that he is going to be more than prepared in this game. But, like you said, you got to see it. But we do have a pretty good body of work from his time at Duke, and he looked like a pretty well-prepared quarterback to me. Like, he looked like pretty much nerves of steel when he was housing it against Clemson in the season opener last year. He looked like he was all right. So Marcus Freeman said this about Saturday's Kyle Field environment and trying to take the crowd out of the game.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything intentional that we're going to try to do to take the crowd out. That will be determined probably based off our execution, and I think for us it's the preparation for a loud crowd that's more important than anything. We didn't do a great job last year of playing clean at Duke, right? We had too many pre-snap penalties, and so we've been very intentional on preparing in a loud environment in practice, so we eliminate the pre-snap penalties, right? We can't let the crowd affect our operation, and so I feel very confident we have a great plan for the crowd noise.
Okay, so there's Marcus Freeman. My question to you, Jess, is, like, this is something that neither of us has experienced, is like playing in a setting like that. How much do you think pumping in the crowd noise and playing loud music in practice actually helps prepare for these kind of big time road environments?
Yeah, I would say it helps a good amount in terms of what Marcus Freeman was talking about there. I think what you do for those, what you're worried about is the false starts, the not being able to relay the play, not getting, guys not being able to hear or see their motion indicators, right? And so I think when you practice those things, I think it helps a good amount with that, because you find a way to go silent count. You find a way, to negate the false start penalties. You find a way to, hit your landmarks when you're going in motion. And so I think that it does help a good amount. Is there anything that is going to, is the perfect solution? No, but I at least like the willingness to be prepared, and that's all you can do at the end of the day is try your best to be prepared. And like Marcus Freeman said, execution, getting out to a 14-0 point lead, then you don't have to worry about any of that crowd noise because they're going to be taken out of it, right? The only time the crowd noise is at its best is when at the beginning of the game when it's still 0-0, when a big play happens, or when your team is ahead, because they're constantly going to keep the noise up. But if Notre Dame can get out early, that stuff will take care of itself. And that comes down to execution, like he was talking about.
I mean, that is an if, like Salty says, getting up by 17 points in the first quarter will do it. I mean, that's absolutely right, because I just go back to a few years back when Notre Dame went to Virginia Tech, and all the talk all week long was about Enter Sandman and all that stuff. And it's like, oh, they've got Metallica doing a video message for Enter Sandman. And it was all cool with the lunch pail and all that different stuff. But then 5 minutes into the game, once Notre Dame punched him in the mouth, Enter Sandman and the whole crowd was not a factor the rest of the game. Now, you've got to do that to effectively take the crowd out of the game. You've got to make a big momentum play early and get up early for that to happen. There's no guarantee that any of that's going to happen. In terms of the actual preparation, I think at the very least, I mean, obviously you have to do it to give your team at least some kind of feel of that, even if you're on a practice field or if it's inside the Irish Athletic Center where it's even a little bit louder and you pump the music or the noise, the crowd noise or whatever. You've got to do it so that at least your team has experienced some of those communication difficulties in practice before they get there, because it goes back to the stuff that Riley Leonard was talking about. You've repped it. So at least if you've done some reps in that environment, there's going to be some help. But I just like, you're going to get in as long as it's loud out there, like in the Florida State Georgia Tech game on a neutral field in Dublin last week, you still saw the quarterbacks with the new headset communications putting their hands over their ears, because they couldn't hear the stuff coming in. I don't know how much volume adjustment there is on those things, like how loud you can crank those things, D-Troll Center says helmet comms. And that's, and it's not just the helmet comm to the quarterback, but then, like what you were saying, Jesse, if you get into that 3rd and long situation and you need to change a protection and the crowd is still going nuts out there, like, again, at least you've practiced it, in practice with the extra noise and stuff like that. But there's nothing like that actual true environment when you're the road team on offense out there and you're trying to slide a protection or audible or whatever, or just make sure you've got the snap count right and the whole thing. So to what extent they've been able to work some of those kinks out, hopefully, we don't know. But I just think no matter what kind of road environment that you go into, as long as the game stays close, that home crowd is always going to be a huge factor that you really can't predict. So Played Like a Champion posted his 37 bold and optimistic predictions for the season on the New Champions Lounge. Here is his number 3 prediction. Jack Kaiser will lead the team in solo tackles, and there will be at least a 20-tackle gap between him and the next linebacker. Do you buy or sell that?
I sell that. I think Drake Bowen is going to find a way to be the leading tackler on this defense. Your middle linebackers are the guys that you're going to rely on the most. I think really what it's going to come down to is how much time him and KVA are splitting, because I know there's going to be some sort of rotation, but you got to realize Kaiser's probably going to come out in a lot of nickel and dime situations when they go more speed and coverage type linebackers on those 3rd and long situations. So that means Kaiser, KVA, Bowen, Sneed, Osbury are going to be on the field, in replacement for Kaiser. And so I'm going to sell that. And if it is Kaiser, I don't think he'll have a 20 gap lead either. So I'm selling, I think, both aspects of this.
This is very, very narrow. I do think he's ultimately going to lead the team. I think he'll lead the team in tackles. Solo tackles is another story. The 20 gap lead is what I have to sell. I do think he's going to be at the top of the tackle list, but there is going to be that big rotate. The question is going to be, how much does Kaiser rotate? And like we've talked about, does Kaiser stay on the field the most? Like, he was the linebacker who played the least last year, but now he's the most experienced guy with a group of, fairly raw linebackers. So how many more snaps is he going to be out there? So I buy him being the leader in tackles. It's the 20 gap lead that I've got to sell, though. DK, before that question, Jesse, said that you've had a really good show and not sure if that, you should even take another question because you're batting 1,000. Right.
I hope that was with, sincerity and not sarcasm. But if it was in sincerity, I appreciate it, and I take back my Golden Tate comment from earlier.
All right. This next one, fill in the blank. The Notre Dame assistant coach who is most under the microscope this season is blank.
I think this is an easy one. I think it's Joe Rudolph when you're running out there an offensive line that is as young and inexperienced as what they have. I think that you would, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it boils down to offensive and defensive line coaching. And for me,
there's actually another one that I'd throw in this mix. Do you want me to go ahead and, throw his name out there? And,
yeah.
We can debate, because coming into training camp, it was unquestionably Mike Brown because of all the stuff that was going on with the wide receiver recruiting.
Lack of recruiting.
And all the disgruntlement with wide receiver recruiting going into training camp. And I remember saying at the time, like, what we need right now is to just get to the season so that Mike Brown can show what he can do as an actual football coach. And we're not just talking about recruiting, but that's how much it's changed in just a month. It went, to me, it went from Mike Brown, and before Mike Brown, it was Al Washington, but Al Washington's guys had a pretty good spring. They've had a really good training camp as well. Again, the question with Washington is just like Brown. It's development versus recruiting. Let's not forget, though, Mike Elston, as much as everybody ended up loving Mike Elston before he left Notre Dame to go to Michigan, he was getting a lot of raw 3-star, high upside guys and stuff like that as well. It's not like he was knocking it out of the park with a bunch of high 4- and 5-star guys. Mike Elston was still about development as well, as much as people loved him. So it's gone in this offseason from Washington to Brown. But I think you're right. As of right now, and really through no fault of his own, because Charles Jagasaw got hurt, but the microscope is on Joe Rudolph right now.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Did I take away your whole thunder there?
No, I think it's Joe Rudolph. And again, it's due. I mean, this game is either going to be won or lost by Notre Dame's offensive line. If they look abysmal, they're going to lose. If they can go out there and just get the job done, they're going to win this game. And again, I'd said it earlier in the show. When all the rumors and the questions about the offensive line and who's going to be starting, and now they're going a true freshman at left tackle, that in my eyes is when the line really started to switch the most in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Archer says with Brown being in year 1, I think he has more slack than the line coaches. I mean, Joe Rudolph's only in year 2, though. And it feels like people talk like last year was some kind of disappointment from the offensive line standpoint. I don't know if it's just because there was all this expectation of Billy Strouth being a starter from day one.
2 guys drafted.
And maybe Joe, but I'm talking about a year ago. Maybe Joe Rudolph pulled the rug out from people last year because Strouth didn't start until later on. But it was still a Joe Moore Award semifinalist offensive line last year. Again, was everything perfectly clean last year? No, but again, to Archer's point, he can say Brown gets some slack, which I do agree, but you would have had a hard time convincing a lot of people of that back at the end of June and early July when things weren't going right from a recruiting standpoint at the receiver position. I'm not saying that that's the way it should have been, but would have had a hard time convincing some people. So there's always talk, of course, about which coaches are on the hottest seats going into a season. Which college football coach do you think has the coldest seat going into this season?
This might shock you, or maybe you're like, wow, this is a really intelligent answer. But because of the lineage and who he's kind of, succeeding. To me, it's got to be Kalen DeBoer. I think he's going to get a lot of slack being at Alabama. It's his first year after the Saban era. I think you can expect, the talent, yes, is going to be there. I still think Alabama is going to be a playoff team, but I don't think that there's any expectation that he's going to win a national championship in year one. I just think he needs to kind of be steady Eddie, be 9-3, 10-2, maybe 11-1. And you'll look back on and say, it was his first year, first time in the SEC, first time in the expanded playoff. In the expanded playoff. So to me, I like saying Kalen DeBoer here. I think a couple honorable mentions are Steve Sarkisian, because he did get Texas there last year. So I think they're kind of finally off the hook. He can't have a horrible season, but again, I don't think he can. I think he's off the hook in some regards for Texas being back, right?
I mean, he's still got to prove that they're back 2 years in a row, especially going to the SEC. But I don't think that there's anything on the line for Sark.
And then I think the easiest one, or the most maybe fun one too, is Sherrone Moore at Michigan. There's a whole cheating scandal. Harbaugh left. I don't think that people expect – Michigan got their national championship. I don't think people expect them to be, at that level again. I think they're a borderline playoff team.
Because no matter what happens, you can write it off to all these losses. We lost a first-round quarterback.
Stallions.
We lost our head coach. Stallions. And
the defense, a lot of guys got drafted. Blake Corum is gone. I just think there's lots of excuses that you can throw out there if Michigan ends up 8-4, 9-3.
Cal Whittingham's a good one, Archer, out there at Utah. Probably helps that you're at Utah and there's not a ton of expectations. But the guy's been the head coach since Urban Meyer left. Think about that. That's been, 20 years?
And now they get to play in the Big 12,
Yeah. And my answer is Kirby Smart, though, like Brian says.
But that guy, come on, he's just won championships. Of course he doesn't have.
But the question is, who's got the coldest seat? I mean, it's not to find like a diamond in the rough under the radar cold seat guy. I mean, Kirby Smart is not going anywhere this year. But I do think, you make a good point, and I hadn't really thought about it that way, because like Sloppy Joe says, Elko, you can probably throw most of the first-year head coaches into this mix. Nothing's going to happen to them this year.
But because that was kind of my thought process. But again, I think with Bama, they're going to have enough talent to be 10-2, probably be a playoff team, but not actually win the whole thing. And everyone's going to be like, Kalen DeBoer, first year guy, did a good job, didn't win a national championship. Yeah. All right, let's see what he can do in year 2.
Yeah. Kirk Ferentz, that's always a good one as long as he's been around, longest tenured FBS head coach. And Stymie says Dion just to say Dion. Look, they win 5 games. Apparently that's successful. And it doesn't matter who you have to answer questions to out there in Boulder anymore. So
that reporter has won I like journalism accolades too, which is absolutely wild.
Yeah. So I saw someone on Twitter X the other day say he got a sorry for the delay email 8 months after the original email was set. So my question to you, what is the maximum acceptable time that can pass before you can still use the sorry for the delay response?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
I think a month is very rude and inconsiderate. I think 2 weeks is valid for something where
you got to come up with more than sorry for the delay.
That's what I mean.
Once a month goes by.
I need a whole, my dog died, then my wife died, and then I got in a car accident.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that need to happen if you're going to send me a sorry for the delay after 8 months.
8 months. Yes.
I think a month is really ultimately pushing it. And so, again, I'm more so at the 2 week mark. And don't even say sorry for the delay. Just say sorry I forgot, probably at the end of the day.
Yeah. Make up some excuse about, your email got lost in my spam or something, it can't just be sorry for the, which those things do happen sometimes or sometimes.
Yeah, but 8 months?
Yeah, 8 months.
Where are you drawing the line at?
How do you even find that email after it? It's funny because I was listening to a podcast recently and all these people were talking about, they have literally thousands of unread emails in their email inbox. I don't know how many you let yours build up to, but I clear mine a couple times a day. Like
Oh,
I try to make sure that I'm on top of it.
I instantly delete emails that I don't want out of all folders.
Yeah.
Right now in my email, I'll tell you right now, I only have like maybe 40 emails in my entire inbox right now total.
Yeah. My cutoff, I think, is a week. I think a week is it. I think 2 weeks is too long. Like, again, like you got to come up with something better than sorry for the delay. 8 months. I can't even imagine responding with that 8 months down the line. I'm not exactly sure like what kind of email it was, but Salty, I think we're just going to have to agree with this. Salty asked if this is the greatest IB happy hour show ever.
Just going to say, are we surprised? I'm filling in for Vince on a Wednesday. So just kidding, Vince. I love you wherever you are.
Reading into something there. Andre wants to know who's co-hosting with me tomorrow. That's a mystery, Andre. As it turns out, there's a higher, I'd say that there's a 90% chance that you're looking at just this tomorrow. So get to those we in, we out questions, and I'll have a lot to talk
fun
about
with it
tomorrow. The expectation, though, is that Jesse, whether he's on a lazy, dirty river on Friday or not, is going to find a place to do countdown to kickoff with Vincent.
Whoa, you're spoiling all my secrets.
So you're looking at a possibly 3+ Henry show on Friday.
Maybe Scooby.
Maybe, I don't know. Scooby's a little bit squirrelier. So
He is.
DK says he's available. I don't know what Brian would pay you for that, DK. Mrs. Sean should host. I don't know if you want that, Anthony. Like, my daughter has lobbied me to try to host before. So
Bailey would do better than Mom would. I'll just end it at that.
And
Bailey actually has airtime from her Nurse B prediction days.
That's right. Many moons ago, when Jesse and his sister Bailey were young pups, we used to do we called it Dr. J and Nurse B. It was NFL predictions every week. I don't know if I've still got those
tapes somewhere.
Tapes around here someplace or not. I know I'm
sure you do. Well, things get thrown away often in that house, so wouldn't be surprised.
That's very true. We'll just end it with that. Great stuff tonight. Appreciate all the questions. Great whiteboard, Jesse. Hit the like button before you leave because we do appreciate it, and it is always much needed. We are one day closer to Notre Dame and Texas A&M kicking off the 2024 season. So thanks for being here. Hit the like button. We'll talk to you tomorrow. We'll have some Marcus Freeman comments from his noon Zoom and some we in, we out as well on IB Nation Sports Talk.